Okay, so now let's move on. The left is famous for talking about the white male patriarchy. It's quite ironic that they're using a European scale to justify denying Pharaoh his place, for the most part, and partially because they are survivors of other worldly cultures that mix with Europeans. Remember in the first clip I talk about how basically people are different sections, right, of the snake. Ironically, they talk about compartmentalization in politics, and people talk about being sectioned, in the UK, right? It means being put in the psych ward. Okay, so their argument basically is using the oppressor's scale to deny me my rightful place and to create a kind of socialist, kind of communist, kind of gathering of people from different, from a multicultural gathering, which doesn't assign importance to a true leader. And we look at it, obviously both sides disagree. We have Martin Luther King Day pretty much in vain. Both sides don't want to assign any importance to a leader, obviously not a black leader, okay? Because this is the most stigmatized people. Part of the game is everybody putting the black man beneath them, and the reason for that is people like me, okay? Martial artists who prove logically what the order should be, and people like Cersei, who was like a short, kind of stubby black woman who's seen as unattractive, okay, who teamed up with King Minos and Pacify and so on. And what they basically did is they created this bully culture, the labyrinth, right? Bully culture, using psychology and witchcraft and so on. This is the moral of the story, and this has some basis in history, historical basis. Okay, so let's talk about some of the direction of society, right? Maitreya, right? Mate Rhea. Who was Rhea? Kronos, Saturn's wife. This connects to Venus. There's also a Uranus connection here, right? The different planets, right? Pluto and Mars and so on. Okay, so we see that there's a Dana White associated with the UFC. He's like the spokesperson for the UFC or something, the president or something. And there's a Dana White who's the spokesman for the Pentagon. Okay, and during the speech about the splitting the Air Force into Space Force 6 or whatever he called it, okay, it was during, when he first mentioned it was, according to this Fox News article, was during the Army Dark Knights ceremony, college football. So now we have the Pentagon as opposed to a pyramid, okay? We have the UFC, okay? So this is different forms of warfare, right? UFC fighting, and then we have the the Army Dark Knights ceremony, the Knights, a football team. So what is football? The UFC, the Pentagon. Look at things in terms of figure and warfare and physical prowess. Okay, so what is the college football team, the Army, the Knights, the Dark Knights, the UFC, and the Pentagon have in common? Right? They push this kind of big, bulky, kind of bully, philosophy. This also goes back to Serapis, right? Apis, the bull, Osiris associated with bull people, but also associated with Horus, a way to keep a hint of the true martial arts order and to express it in the terms of the bull and with the image, the imagination, the eye mage, the perspective of the mage, the magician, the psychologist of Hades. Okay, so this then leads us to, and of course Dana White, right? They both have the same name, but they're two different people existing at the same time with two key positions as part of this. And it's the Dark Knight, just like Batman, right? The Dark Knight. It's like, look, night. We represent the night, not the bright morning star. The night, the moon temple, the different planets you can see through the telescope at night. Okay, it's the dark side. All right. So we look at in 1960, Richard Ramirez, a.k.a. the Night Stalker, and he has a bunch of other stupid little names too, the Satanist, complete trash, complete garbage, and I feel like it should be okay for me to say that. He was carried away. He basically was, remember, Hades is also the deity of getting people carried away, right? He had an older cousin who was a Vietnam vet, okay, who showed him Polaroids of Vietnamese women, poor women, rest in peace, who were raped and mutilated, one with him holding the head of one. Imagine this being put on this impressionable child. This person had some kind of a heavy bookcase or a bookshelf or something fall on his head, okay? And he also had to swing hit him in the head on the playground, and it caused him to have seizures. This is Richard Ramirez I'm talking about, not the older cousin. Okay. His father, I believe it was a Juarez policeman who had fits of rage, and he also lived with his uncle, who was a peeping Tom, supposedly, who would take him on missions to go peep on women. You see how this is learned behavior, is conditioned? Where do these people get this idea to go rape in the military and do these? It's conditioned. And it has to do with interfering with the brain's natural processes, drugs, brute force. This is part of the danger of UFC fighting and football at this, as well. Okay, because blunt force trauma to the brain, and my dad's a brain surgeon, can cause a new personality to form and somebody to kind of be born again. You know, you're dunked in water symbolically, right? Some kind of chemical, some kind of change of the mind, and then you come out. And the psychological effect of the church, right? They deal in psychology. Some people jump you in gangs. They deal in brute force. They deal in drugs. You know, mind control operations, right? Electroshock therapy, right? Zapping the brain, in mental health. Okay, so he was conditioned by Satanists, Juarez, satanic cults in Mexico that turn, again, horrible. Rest in peace to all those Juarez women who were raped and murdered while the world plays stupid because they're satanic cult bitches under ritual satanic abuse. Does this qualify as ritual? Do they have to dress up like the devil and scream, "You motherfucker, this is satanic ritual abuse"? Of course it does. Was there a scare that was probably controlled by Satanists themselves, and they said, well, it's just a scare. They probably put extras on it on purpose to give enough fake evidence to say everything was a lie, but certainly there was some truth going on there. I know that. I know that. Moving on. All right, so we talk about a softie and muscle definition and being cut, being ripped, being toned, right? It's right there in the wordplay. Okay, I don't have much time yet. I forgot the first part. All right, so we talk about bull ox. Social norms enrages people. And let me give you just one example, being snobbed, right? Public policy, immigration, right? The social norms that come with that can really enrage people, right? Add drugging and being thrown off with psychology and blunt force trauma from sports and fighting and boxing and UFC fighting. And add the pagan mystery foundation of society, right? Add the sage, which is gas E, E-gas. Okay, to gas somebody until they're an E. Ever heard of laughing gas? There's different ways to gas someone to cause different changes in the brain. With the accompanying psychology and the associated psychology, you can really fuck somebody up and make them act like a silly homosexual or something. Okay, moving on. The Horus is the face of the sun. Ra is simply the strength of the sun, the spirit. The priests themselves couldn't truly identify with the sun's cycle. Later on, they usurped the powers of Horus with everyone else. They said, let's do it over again, because they didn't want to accept the moral direction of the hawk, the falcon, the true martial art direction of society. So Horus is the face and is the archetype of Pharaoh, and they've been acting like bitches and twisting it ever since. Okay, so the Greek gods are basically like politicians and people concerned with ideas and controlling sex and trade routes. This is not a valid religion. It's stupid to look at it as a valid religion. This is also another reason why the Bible cannot be completely accurate, because they describe things in terms of Hades and so on. They're building on a pagan idea that is designed by corporations on record to control cultures. These are people funding cults to control sex and reproduction and the trade routes and so on. Okay, and the image, right? The image. Okay. In this video, I will prove definitively that mankind must default with the conclusions of the natural martial arts order a long time ago, because there's two states of mind that are allowed for in today's society, and in the future, certainly, they will just refine their techniques for forcing you into one of those two states of mind, and even if they one day stopped, it would be past the point of no return. One is a kind of brain-dead, zombie, drugged-up state, kind of like being brain-dead, in a coma or something in the hospital where you've been pronounced brain-dead permanently, and it's better off, everyone's better off if they just pull the plug. And two is such a depraved state of complicity and being so out of touch and living in such an evil existence, such an evil state of existence, that we're all better off without you. We're all better off. Everyone's better off dead. Okay, you're a danger to yourself and to others spiritually, and you're complicit with sexual sadists, mass murderers, and we'll get into that momentarily with Richard Ramirez and what really caused him to be the way he was. So we talk about world religion, right? Religion, not raw legion. I've gone over the difference between the E and the A quite often. The world snake. Horrors that reproduced with the snake spirit, animal peoples. Ground crawlers. Their ancestors starting in their ground. Who are your ancestors really? All of our ancestors started in Africa. So if you're talking about your ancestors, why are you limiting it to your culture? Because you're a snake, right? A snake is a ground crawler. You're concerned with the ground and your image. You're a basic-minded ground crawler. Worldly ground crawler. You're not transcending because you can't even see past your own flesh. You can't see past your own fucking nose. How are you transcending? How are you crossing over? How are you rising above and beyond? You can't even rise above your own flesh. You're a spiritual bottom feeder, a ground crawler. Okay. So the Northeast African ancestors that are the beginning. God created the martial arts man in his image. Now, I am not talking about Christianity. When we're talking about what forged man to connect to God and to be one with him, raw connect, raw legion, an army of God. It's when God made man in Africa in his image, okay? But more importantly, in his spiritual likeness. As you forge your body with natural martial arts, you start resembling God's traits if he were to be among us. But it is the spiritual connection that God made man capable of and made man in. Raw connect, rejoin, raw join. Okay. That's what religion means. So to say that this part of the world is mine, who said that? You know, politicians, your tribal elders. These are people from various cultures that were reacting to other cultures they left from. Okay? And everybody was reacting, including black African people themselves, to the natural martial arts order. And the different religions around the area were arguing in terms of martial arts at first. And over time it became trickery and poisoning and so on. You know, and politicking. Right? Polis, cult center, politicking. Okay. So for them to say that this is my land for my people, aren't we all part of God's family? Why are you drawing that line? When you see some of the Native American sayings, even, they say something along the lines of that we're all the children of God and the universe is connected. And we see various cultures touching on this idea. Well, why can't they go further? Why can't they walk in the light? Why do they have to be ground crawlers defaulting with their own ethnic group or tribe? Why can't they see beyond that? Why do they all think that they're right? They can't all be right. Well, who's right and why? Everyone's reacting to the natural martial arts order and then reacting to that culture and reacting to that culture. This is what they call human progress, a series of reactions, a chain reaction. The chain of command? Is it where it started or where the corrupt bastards took it now? Okay. So it is like a thief. It's like God gave a kingdom, a mansion to man. And we have a natural order among men. And then some of the peasants went to some rooms before the king did. And he said, this is my room. And the other peasants took it from him and said, no, this is my room by right of conquest. Subtly referencing natural order, right? Not the right of the natural order, but firearms and unnatural conquest. Sorcery, alchemy, technology, these things are unnatural. Obviously, both of them are wrong, and it belongs to the natural martial arts order. I get the bitch shit every time I'm making a good video. I'll have to make a part 2.